Hey there everyone, I'm back again with another build that I've been playing recently, and it is my Holy Hammer build. Doo-doo-doo! As with all of my builds, they're designed to play the game kind of casually in a relaxed manner, just so that you can kind of have fun, explore, do the bosses, play the game, get through it, finish it, be happy. I very rarely ever play any glass cannon builds, and this certainly isn't one of them. Even though you can probably see I'm wearing Rakshasa's armor. I'll get into that later. So this build operates around using the Giant Crusher hammer. It is an amazingly high damage weapon, but more importantly, it is to be used alongside an Ashe of War called Prayerful Strike. Now, Prayerful Strike is an Ashe of War, which basically means when you use this, it gives you an increased amount of poise, so you're less likely to be staggered. And as a result, you heal for 1/3 of the damage dealt. So as you can imagine, the higher the damage output in a single strike, the more you're going to heal. Now, I have taken quite a bit of damage already, or a little bit of damage, and I'm just going to show you now what this looks like. Boom. Instant death. We're completely healed, even after trading. That is the Ashe of War. That is basically, in essence, what makes this build so ridiculously easy. And as you can see, we're using the DPS armor, which actually means we're going to take more damage than if we wore proper armor. But I'm going to get into it now straight away by going to the stats. The stats I use for this are not overly complicated, and as you can see, I'm level 235. You don't have to be 235 to make this work. It's quite easy to make this work, and it's done by simply dropping all of the faith. I know I said it was a holy hammer build. It doesn't need to be holy to do exactly what you just saw me do. You get rid of all of the faith, change the weapon from sacred to heavy, you'll do roughly the same damage, a little bit less. The healing will still be there, but you do such an insane amount of damage per swing, it doesn't even matter. So, you know, if you want to drop this from level 235 that I have to level 200, you would drop faith. If you wanted to drop it from 235 to 150, you would drop all of the faith, and then simply use the consumable golden vow item, or any other buffing item you want, like the banner, the standard, whatever you like. So the stats really aren't too important. The only important stats obviously is going to be vigor at 60. Mind has to be wherever you're comfortable with, because obviously you're going to be using FP to use the Ashe of War. Endurance, again, that varies depending on what armor you want to use and how much energy you need. You don't really need that much stamina to use this weapon, because it attacks quite slowly between swings. However, obviously, the heavier armor you can put on, the better. Strength-wise, again, this has amazing strength scaling, especially if you're using the heavy version, the version without using faith. You will get an S scaling in strength. Insane damage, not quite as high as what we have here, but insane damage. Intelligence, you don't need that at all. Dexterity, you don't need that at all. And arcane, you don't need that at all. You literally only need vigor, endurance, and strength to make this build work, and obviously however much mind you want. So it's quite easy to do at level 150. It just slightly changes what you need to do. So I'm going to go here to our equipment. Obviously you can see I have the Sacred Giant Crusher. This is... the reason I have it sacred is because if you have the excess levels like I do at level 235, Sacred beats out the strength, even though the strength is an S scaling. Due to the nature of the soft and hard caps, it becomes more efficient for me at a high level to put all my stuff in faith and strength, get the dual scaling, and it will take me above the damage of what the strength one does. Obviously, if something has faith and or physical resistances, I'm going to suffer more on the resistance end, but generally not a problem. So I've gone the Sacred Giant Crusher route, and you can see my damage there. This isn't in the DLC area. There's no Scadutree Blessings taking effect. There's no buffs. The current AR of this weapon is 1,121 flat. That's with nothing else on other than these armor pieces. And that's basically all that is right now, which is crazy. Obviously, again, if you don't want to be level 235, you want to be level 150, you would take this to the strength affinity, the heavy affinity, and just maximize that S scaling and strength. You'll do around about 900 AR, so there's like a 200 and a bit AR difference between the sacred and the heavy. Not really an issue. Obviously, our Ashe of War is Prayerful Strike. Again, I have the Erdtree seal plus 10. You can use whatever seal you want, providing you're only buffing. The reason I'm using the Erdtree seal is because I have 80 in Faith. This has an S scaling in Faith, which means for just casual giggles, I can use any kind of Faith incantation I like, just to have a little bit of fun. And fighting stuff like dragons or annoying things that move around a lot, you might find that the Erdtree seal on the Faith version, allowing you to cast ranged attacks and having a ranged alternative, is generally just a good thing to have, right? It helps out on those annoying mobs that are either at range and they're going to hit you going in, or you're just having trouble with them because they're moving all over the place. So any seal you like, if you're only using the seal to buff. But if you're stacking the Faith like I am, the Erdtree still will allow you to blow stuff up, which is always great. The headpiece of this armor, I like to take the Horned Warrior helm. I can't for the life of me get one to drop on this character, so I'm using the Divine Bird helm, which gives 4 dexterity and 3 strength. The Horned Warrior helm will give 5 strength. We don't need any dexterity, so the dexterity on this is just pretty much wasted. The Horned helm is the best one for an additional 5 strength, which increases our scaling and can free up more levels, so I can take 5, or I can take a little bit from strength if I want to and put it into FP or whatever, wherever else I want to put it. Armor wise, I have the Rakshasa armor. This is 2% damage per piece we wear, so we've got an additional 6% damage going on across the board here on all these 3 pieces. The damage negation for the weight of this armor is the only negative that it has, and essentially this is you take more damage for wearing this. This is not very protective armor for the weight that it costs, but it is giving us 6% more damage, and there are options to change this that I'll go through shortly after. On Talismans wise, we have Boost Max HP, the Crimson Amber Medallion +3. We use this because the more HP we have, the more HP we have to heal, and the more HP we have to trade, because generally what happens is you attack, your attack is slow, so you will be hit while you're attacking, so you have to have the HP to take the initial damage, and then when your attack hits, you'll basically get all of your HP back and you'll be perfectly fine. Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Again, there's not many talisman options that are particularly good offensively, but we have some really solid defensive options, which this is a good one, and it's good for counteracting the Rakshasa armor, is to have the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman to boost the physical damage negation that the Rakshasa armor is lacking. The Ritual Shield Talisman is kind of my float talisman. Now, the defense bonuses from this is absolutely crazy, providing you're at full health. And as you saw, we can trade and hit and go straight back to full health regardless. So, especially when you're wielding the Rakshasa armor, this is a particularly good talisman because your HP will bounce. The only time this isn't good is if you're suffering status effects or you're being hit rapidly lots of times really quickly, because then, because of the constant nature of you taking damage, even if you do your strike and you go back to full health, you'll only be there for like a fraction of a second before you take more damage and basically neutralizing the effect of this talisman. So it's quite situational. You may not want this on all the time. You might want something more static and a bit better. Last talisman, the Shard of Alexander. It's pretty self-explanatory for any build that's relying around its Ashe of War. greatly boosts the attack power of skills. This makes our Ashe of War deal more damage, and because our Ashe of War deals more damage, we heal more. Pretty basic. Now we have one consumable with this, and that is the Iron Jar Aromatic. Turns the warder's body to steel. What this basically does is it's endure. It's a duration, a time lasting endure that lasts for a considerable amount of time, but it has two drawbacks. The first drawback when you use it is you cannot run, which means if a monster is jumping about all over the place, you can't chase it, right? If your enemy is moving too much, this is not helpful at all. And the second downside is you fat roll, right? So even though I've got medium load with the current setup, if I use the Iron Jar Aromatic, I fat roll, which means that this is where the nuance comes in as to with the armor and this talisman. Because if you're going to be using the Iron Jar Aromatic, you're assuming you're probably fighting a boss that's not overly mobile, that doesn't run away from you very much, or a monster that's just like very much in your face. So you will change your Ritual Shield Talisman to a Verdigris Discus, right, which at medium load gives you absolutely nothing, and you'll change your armor to the heaviest armor that you can possibly put on, right? You will put on the heaviest gear you put on and just be an absolute tank unit. Why would you do this? Because you're using the Iron Jar Aromatic. If the Iron Jar Aromatic means that you can't run in the first place anyway, and you also can't jump or fast roll or medium roll, there's literally very little downside to just becoming overloaded. It will maximize the defense from the Verdigris Discus, it'll maximize the defense from the armor. That combined with the Iron Jar Aromatic, meaning that you're not really ever going to get staggered by pretty much anything, and the damage you're going to take is just going to be literally nothing. You will be an immovable object, but obviously against bosses like Mesmer, this makes you a sitting duck. You just basically spend your time slow walking after him. It really has to be used against enemies that are just going to be right there in front of you. And at the end of this video, I've got a few clips of me fighting various things. You'll see me actually use this and tank an Erdtree Sentinel, smashing me on the head like it's nothing. So keep watching if you want to see that part. So basically, that's the caveat surrounding the armor. So that's basically the equipment there. You've got a lot of freedom. If you want to have the medium roll and the maximum damage, the Rakshasa's armor and a stat bonusing helm, get rid of the Verdigris Discus for something that's going to be more useful, like the Ritual Talisman, because your HP is going to be constantly bouncing. And if you're fighting a boss that's going to be constantly in your face, you'll switch that back out and just be a complete tank. So with that, that is the base game there. You can see without any buffs, our weapon, well, our weapon's gone down now because we changed our armor. So let's pop this back on. Let's pop this back on real quick. Where's my helmet? Where's my helmet? There it is. Right, so we pop that back on and we're all set up now. So as you can see, the base damage of this without any buffs is 1121. Our defenses are actually pretty decent considering we're wearing Rakshasa armor. This is decent mostly because of the Ritual Shield Talisman, but we have 55.8 in physical, everything else at 55 to 56, and then our elemental is still at like 42 to 49, with lightning being our weakest element. But that's not necessarily a problem because we still absolutely demolish everything in the base game like it's nothing, because it's not very difficult. And the bonuses get very crazy when you go into the DLC and you have the Scadutree Blessings, and we're going to get to that right now. Alright, here we are. We are in the DLC territory. Now anyone that's been playing the DLC will understand or know that the Scadutree Blessings multiply, or they add a accumulating multiplier to your character's stats by a percentage base. So you saw what our stats were just now. Now in the DLC, with 20 Scadutree Blessings, our base damage is 2,299 AR, our defenses, even in Rakshasa armor, is at 78. 77 to 78 on all of the physical defenses, 71 to 72 on all of the elemental. That is nuts. That's ridiculously high. And that is with the Rakshasa armor. So that should bring into perspective how tanky this is in the least tanky equipment setup that we actually have. And that is without any buffs. So we're just going to put that here. I'm going to do the rest of the calculations in this because this is where everybody's basically playing and this is where it kind of matters. So I'm going to go through the buffing sequence. So to buff, obviously we have Golden Vow, which is kind of a staple at this point, and the Flame Grant Me Strength. These are our two main buffs here, and obviously we have our Physick. I'll get into the Physick later, so let's just do the buffs. Golden Vow goes up. The AR goes from 2,500 goes to 2,590. All the defenses you can see we're now in the 80s and the 75s. Flame Grant Me Strength. We now have 2,824 AR. We're in the 80s again still. And then we have the Physick as the last part here. And that takes us to 3,108, which is absolutely nuts. Our physical defenses are in the 83s and 78s. And you have to keep in mind that this is using the Rakshasa armor, which is the least tanky armor we can pretty much possibly wear that isn't nothing. That is how good and tanky this is. And that you have to remember, that's not including the Iron Jar aromatics effect, which is just going to make us completely immovable. So alright, so I just want to go over the Wondrous Physick that I'm using. This is probably where one of the biggest boosts to my damage comes from and how we get over 3,100 AR. And this is also part of the reason why I opted to go for the Faith variant rather than the Strength variant as soon as you have the excessive levels to be able to do so. And that's why it's my preferred one, ignoring the fact that you also get access to incantations. So as far as Wondrous Physicks go, there's only a few ways in which you can boost your physical weapons damage because it has no elemental scaling. The only thing you can do is the damage increase after successive hits, or your HP will go down over time for a damage percent increase. Now those are good, but they present problems because our weapon is incredibly slow. It's not going to chain off loads of hits quickly. You're not really likely, especially considering the fact that you will one-shot, if not 2 or 3-shot, every enemy in the game. You're not going to get the benefits from attacking multiple times quickly. That's just not going to happen. So that's not going to work. And again, the taking damage over time for a damage increase is good, but if you're using the Ritual Shield Talisman, it's actually going to completely screw over your defenses because it's going to turn that off. So if you plan on using the Ritual Shield Talisman, you don't want to use that Physick. So the Physics that I do use is quite simple. The Opaline Hard tier is pretty much a standard, I feel like, in most builds, especially mine where I don't want to take loads of damage because I want to have a more enjoyable adventuring experience. And that's basically going to boost all damage negation. Fantastic. And the second one being the Holy Shrouding Cracked tier. And this is what's going to scale our holy damage component of our hammer even more. This is what sends it from 2,800-ish to 3,100 in the DLC area. So just wanted to go over that, and that's what I'm using. Even, you'll see in the video, the Erd trees have elemental resistance to holy, and you will see it absolutely demolish the thing. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. So yep, that's the Wondrous Physick part. That is the build. Everything's there. Hopefully you enjoy it. I'm going to cut to a bunch of clips of me fighting various things and you can see the effects and see how it works. Unfortunately, there is no bosses because I am still trying to farm everything out of this playthrough before I move on to my new game +2. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully it was useful, and any opinions or suggestions I would be happy to read in the comments, and I'll try to answer everybody that leaves a reply. So have fun, Hopefully this build works for you like it has me. It's been an enjoyable experience. It absolutely crushes bosses. It absolutely crushes mobs. And yeah, it's just great.